The cold wind swept across the desolate moon as Lyra checked the perimeter of the small human medical outpost. Broken fragments of alien ships littered the frozen ground, remnants of the recent battle that had scarred the region. The war had ended only hours ago, but its echoes were still fresh in her mind. The human forces had won, yet the cost had been high. She moved carefully among the wreckage, scanning for survivors. Her duty was simple: save lives no matter whose they were. Among the twisted metal and smoldering debris, a faint sound caught her attention, a weak groan barely audible over the wind. Lyra froze, listening. The noise came again, closer this time. She followed it cautiously, keeping her hand near her communicator in case of danger. Then she saw him. A figure curled beneath the hull of a damaged shuttle, his body thin and battered, his skin shimmering in strange colors unlike any human she had seen. His breathing was shallow, ragged. Lyra hesitated for a moment. This was an enemy soldier, a member of the alien fleet they had just fought. Every instinct told her to leave him or call for security, but another voice inside reminded her of her training. Lives mattered. Everyone deserved help. Carefully she approached, speaking softly in the hope of calming him. "I'm here to help. Stay still." The alien's large eyes opened slowly, filled with confusion and fear. He had clearly expected death or worse. When he saw a human moving closer without a weapon, he stiffened, trying to pull away. Lyra kept her distance at first, kneeling behind a piece of metal and assessing his injuries. His body was covered in burns and deep cuts. One of his limbs was bent at an unnatural angle. He shivered violently, not from cold alone but from pain and fear. Lyra reached into her kit and pulled out a thermal blanket. She draped it over him, and for the first time the alien allowed himself to relax slightly. He made a low, cautious noise, almost a hiss, but did not resist. Lyra's heart beat faster, not from fear of him, but from the realization of what she was doing. She had no reinforcements here, only herself, and yet she chose to help an enemy. She gently touched his arm, checking for a pulse. It was faint but steady. She cleaned some of the grime from his face with a damp cloth, speaking softly. "You're safe now. I won't hurt you." Her words seemed to confuse him further. His species had been taught to fear humans, to expect cruelty. This human offered only care. The alien's body trembled as if unsure whether he could trust her. Lyra carefully lifted him, supporting his broken limb as best she could. Moving slowly, she brought him into the medical bay, a small room filled with supplies and warmth. The alien flinched at every sound of machinery, every soft beep of monitors. Lyra guided him onto a reinforced bed, covering him with another blanket. She worked steadily, ignoring the ache in her own muscles. Dressing his wounds was difficult. His skin reacted differently to her antiseptics, but she adapted, using what she knew from her training and a little intuition. Hours passed as Lyra cleaned, bandaged, and monitored him. The alien remained silent most of the time, watching her with wary eyes. Sometimes he would move suddenly, startled by his own pain or by some imagined threat. Each time, Lyra remained calm, speaking softly and repeating that he was safe. Slowly, she saw his breathing steady, his muscles relax, and a small flicker of trust appear in his gaze. She paused to rest for a moment, sitting beside him and observing. He was young, no older than some of the cadets she had trained with before the war. And yet he had been sent into battle, carrying orders that forced him into conflict with her people. She wondered what he thought of humans now. Did he hate her kind? Did he see her as an enemy too? She did not try to answer. All that mattered was now. Night fell over the moon, though the medical bay remained warm under artificial lights. Outside, the wind howled over the wreckage. Lyra could hear distant communications from her team, but she stayed focused. The alien stirred slightly, moving his head closer to hers as if seeking some reassurance. She smiled faintly, brushing a lock of her hair from her face. "You're going to be okay," she whispered. "I promise." For the first time since the battle, the alien made a sound that was not a hiss or a groan. It was small, almost a murmur, but it held a note of acknowledgement. Lyra felt a cautious hope. She had no idea what his people would do if they discovered him here, but at least for tonight he was alive, safe, and perhaps beginning to understand that not all humans were his enemies. The wind outside raged on, carrying the smell of burnt metal and ice, but inside the medical bay, a fragile peace settled. Two lives, once set against each other by war, now shared a moment of quiet trust. And in that moment, Lyra knew that even in the vast, unforgiving galaxy, compassion could survive, sometimes in the most unexpected places. The alien lay on the narrow medical bed, his breathing deep but uneven. Lyra moved quietly around the small bay, arranging supplies and checking monitors. The first night had been tense, each of them unsure what the other might do. He had stared at her silently, eyes wide, muscles coiled as if ready to flee or strike. She had not flinched, not once. She had only offered care. Morning light filtered through the reinforced windows, faint against the gray moonscape. Lyra brought a tray of food, soft nutrient paste and water, and placed it near him. The alien flinched at the movement but did not retreat. He sniffed cautiously, then sniffed again, unsure whether it was safe. Lyra watched him quietly, giving him space. She knew trust could not be forced. She only hoped it could grow slowly like a fragile seed. She cleaned his wounds again, this time more carefully. He flinched when she touched a sensitive area, pulling away slightly. Lyra held his hand gently, speaking softly. "I won't hurt you. I only want to help." Her voice was calm, steady, like a quiet current beneath a storm. 4 hours she tended to him, rotating bandages, checking for infection, and adjusting the supports for his broken limb. The alien watched her every move. His eyes, glowing faintly in the dim light, reflected suspicion. He had been taught that humans were ruthless. Care from them usually meant capture, pain, or death. Yet Lyra did not hurt him. She did not shout, she did not restrain him. Her hands were firm but gentle. Slowly he began to relax just a little. By mid-afternoon, the alien had moved slightly closer to the edge of the bed. He sniffed the air again and touched a blanket with one hand as if testing its texture. Lyra smiled faintly. "Good," she said softly. "You're safe here. Nothing will harm you." He did not respond, but his body uncoiled slightly, and that was enough. Lyra brought a small scanner and hovered it near him, careful not to make sudden movements. The alien flinched at first but froze when he realized it did not touch him. She explained slowly, "This only tells me how your body is doing. It won't hurt you." He watched as she adjusted the readings, his glowing eyes following each movement. Slowly he began to understand that her actions were for his benefit, not her own gain. Hours passed. The alien made no sound, but he began observing her more openly. He watched her gestures, the way she moved with care, the way she did not rush or act angrily. It was strange for him. He had never encountered a human who did not try to control or dominate him. Each careful action built a small thread of trust, invisible but present. Lyra took short breaks to eat and rest, sitting near him but not too close. She spoke sometimes, not demanding answers, not asking about his rank or mission. She only talked about small things: the moon's cold wind, the warmth of the bay, the hum of machinery. Gradually the alien's eyes softened, though only slightly. He began to lower his shoulders, just a little, as if the weight of constant alertness was easing. By evening, Lyra noticed he had moved his head slightly toward her when she placed fresh bandages. It was a small gesture, almost imperceptible, but it meant he was beginning to accept her presence. She did not press further. She simply continued her work, letting him take the lead in showing how much he could tolerate. Patience, she knew, was the bridge to trust. When the lights dimmed for the night cycle, the alien made a low, soft noise, almost like a sigh. Lyra looked at him. His eyes were not fully relaxed, but they were no longer filled with panic or fear. He had accepted that she would not harm him, at least for now. That small realization seemed to calm him. Lyra sat quietly beside the bed, keeping watch. The silence was heavy, but it was also peaceful in its own way. Over the next days this routine repeated. Lyra tended to him carefully each day. She washed his wounds, replaced bandages, and monitored his vitals. He began to allow her closer, sometimes even letting her touch areas he had previously flinched from. He ate more willingly, drank without hesitation, and even shifted slightly in his sleep to avoid discomfort. Each day Lyra saw tiny changes. A twitch of the hand that meant he no longer expected pain. A softening of the eyes that meant fear was receding. The alien had begun to understand in small ways that humans could be kind. That trust was not weakness. That mercy could exist even across species and war. One evening, as the cold moonscape stretched beyond the windows, the alien moved closer than before, almost brushing her arm as she adjusted his blankets. Lyra froze for a moment, not wanting to startle him. He did not pull away. Slowly, he closed his eyes, the first real sign of relaxation since she had found him. Lyra felt a quiet hope settle in her chest. The road ahead was long, and the galaxy beyond the moon remained dangerous. She did not know if his people would ever forgive or understand what she had done. But for now, here in this small medical bay, she had proven that mercy could exist even between enemies, even in war, even in the darkest places. That night, as the cold wind howled outside, Lyra watched over him. The alien slept with fewer jerks and flinches than before. He was not yet fully healed and he was far from trusting, but the first walls were falling. And in that fragile, unspoken understanding, a bond began to form, one that could change everything the galaxy thought it knew about humans. The alien stirred quietly in the medical bay, his breathing steady but slow. Days had passed since Lyra had first found him among the wreckage, and each day he had grown a little stronger. The small alien, once tense and guarded, now moved with a cautious curiosity. His eyes, still glowing faintly, followed her every gesture, studying her with a mix of suspicion and wonder. He had seen humans as enemies all his life, yet here was one who brought no harm, only care. Lyra sat on a small stool beside him, gently adjusting a support brace on his arm. "Try not to move too quickly," she said softly. The alien tilted his head slightly, not speaking, but he seemed to understand. Words were not needed between them. Actions had begun to replace conversation. Every day she tended to his injuries, offered food and water, and ensured he remained warm. In return he observed, learned, and began to respond in small ways. He reached out once, cautiously, touching the edge of a tray that held his food. Lyra held her hand near his, not to stop him, but to guide him. Slowly he picked up a piece of the soft nutrient paste and tasted it. His large eyes widened slightly at the flavor. Lyra smiled faintly. "Good," she whispered. "You're safe here. No one will take this from you." He did not answer, but the tension in his shoulders eased a little. Days turned into a rhythm. Lyra would clean his wounds, replace bandages and check vitals while he watched silently. Sometimes he shifted slightly, testing how much he could trust her hands. Sometimes he spoke softly in his own language, but Lyra did not understand the words. Instead, she listened to the tone, the hesitation, the faint curiosity in his voice. Over time, she began to understand too. He was learning about humans just as she was learning about him. One evening, Lyra noticed him examining a small device on the wall, a medical scanner she had used to monitor him. He tilted it, rotated it in his hands and made soft noises of curiosity. She knelt beside him, not taking the device away. "It's only to help you," she said. The alien paused, then touched her hand briefly before returning to the scanner. That small contact was a breakthrough. It was the first voluntary gesture of trust he had offered. As they continued their routine, a silent understanding grew. Lyra no longer needed to speak every instruction. He could anticipate her actions. He began to move with her, adjusting his body when she needed to change bandages or clean a wound. His responses were careful, deliberate, as if he were learning to participate in his own healing. The alien had been trained for battle, for obedience, and for fear, but here he was learning something new, cooperation built on trust rather than force. One afternoon, the alien shifted slightly in his bed and looked directly at her. For the first time, his gaze held more than wariness, it held acknowledgement. He made a soft sound, one that seemed to carry a question. Lyra tilted her head. "I don't understand your words," she said softly, "but I hear you. I know you're asking something." He watched her closely, then slowly gestured toward the food tray. She smiled and brought it closer. He nodded once, small but deliberate, and ate without fear. It was a silent conversation, one without language, yet full of meaning. The alien's behavior began to change in other ways too. He allowed her closer, tolerated gentle touches, and even let her adjust his position while he rested. He would occasionally extend a hand toward her when he needed assistance, a subtle sign of trust. Each small gesture built a foundation of understanding that words alone could never create. Lyra realized that their connection was growing stronger not through commands or explanations, but through patience, care, and respect. Night fell, and the medical bay glowed softly under artificial lights. Lyra prepared for the night cycle, dimming the lights and making sure the alien was comfortable. He moved closer to the center of the bed, no longer pressed against the edge in fear. His breathing was calm, steady, and he occasionally glanced at her with those luminous eyes, as if confirming that she would remain nearby. Lyra watched him for a moment, noting the small signs of progress. He was still cautious, but he was no longer tense. In the following days, their silent communication became more pronounced. He learned to anticipate her movements, and she learned to interpret his subtle gestures. A shift of the hand, a tilt of the head, a soft sound, all became part of their shared language. He began to trust that her actions were meant to protect him, not control him. And in return, Lyra found that she could trust him to respond appropriately, to cooperate with his own care, and even to show small signs of curiosity and interest in the world around him. One morning, as Lyra prepared his meal, he reached out and touched her hand briefly, holding it for the first time. She did not pull away. Instead, she nodded softly, understanding the significance of the gesture. It was a simple act, yet it spoke volumes. In that moment, they had bridged the divide between human and alien, enemy and healer, fear and trust. The alien shifted in his bed, looking at her with a hint of what could only be described as respect. He had seen humans fight, destroy and conquer, but he had also seen the hands that healed. And he had chosen, silently and cautiously, to accept that care. Lyra knew that their bond was far from complete, but it had begun in a way that could change everything. As the moonscape outside glimmered faintly under distant starlight, Lyra watched him rest, breathing evenly, safe for the first time in his life. Words were unnecessary. Actions had spoken clearly. Humans were capable of mercy, compassion, and understanding. And in that quiet room, a connection formed that neither war nor species boundaries could erase. Trust had begun, and understanding beyond words had taken root. The quiet of the medical bay was broken by the soft hum of distant engines. Lyra had been tending to the alien, now stronger and more alert, when the scanners in the outpost beeped urgently. She frowned at the readings. A fleet was approaching, and it carried the unmistakable energy signatures of the alien's army. Her heart raced, but she stayed calm. The alien, now sitting upright on the bed, stiffened. His glowing eyes widened as he detected the incoming ships. He looked at Lyra, an unspoken question in his gaze. He had expected humans to panic, to arm themselves, to prepare for an attack. But Lyra only adjusted the bay doors and spoke softly. "Stay here. Nothing will happen while I am here." The fleet hovered over the moon, scanning for targets. Lyra knew the alien commanders would assume she was harboring their soldier. The thought of retaliation crossed her mind, but she refused to act with fear. She had chosen mercy and she would not abandon it now. The alien shifted slightly, his gaze fixed on her. He made a low sound, almost like a warning. Lyra nodded, understanding that he was concerned for both of their safety. She gestured for him to remain calm while she accessed the communication system. She sent a quiet signal into space, broadcasting her location as a medical facility and requesting that no harm be done to anyone inside. Minutes passed like hours. The alien watched the screen with cautious eyes, his tail flicking nervously. Then a message appeared from the fleet. It was not a threat, but a demand: surrender the wounded soldier or face destruction. Lyra swallowed her fear. She typed a response. "This soldier is under medical care. He is not a weapon. He will not be taken. We will not allow harm here." The alien tilted his head. He had expected humans to surrender him immediately. He had been trained to obey authority, to follow orders without question. Yet here was a human defying them, not with anger, not with aggression, but with calm determination. He studied her, curiosity and something like admiration forming in his expression. The fleet did not respond immediately. Lyra took a deep breath and returned to the alien's side. "You need to trust me," she said quietly. "I will not let anyone harm you." He made a low murmur and slowly, almost imperceptibly, he leaned back, letting her care continue. Trust had been fragile before, but now it was stronger than ever. Then the unexpected happened. A small shuttle from the fleet landed on the moon's surface. Its ramp descended and figures began to step forward. Lyra tensed, expecting armed soldiers ready to enforce their command. But instead of aggression, the aliens moved carefully, bowing slightly as they approached. Each step was deliberate, controlled. Their eyes were fixed on her, but not with hostility. There was respect, hesitation, and acknowledgement. The wounded alien stirred. He had never seen his army behave this way. Commanders did not bow. Soldiers did not show humility. Yet here they were, kneeling before the human who had saved him. He looked at Lyra, incredulous, his glowing eyes wide. "Why?" he murmured in his language, and she shook her head gently. "You do not need to understand yet. Just watch." The alien's army moved closer, forming a respectful circle around the outpost. They lowered their heads, leaving space around him and Lyra. Weapons were nowhere in sight. The fleet had not fired, had not demanded compliance. They had come to witness what the alien soldier had told them, that a human had healed him, treated him with care, and refused to surrender him even under threat. Lyra stayed calm, though her heart raced. The situation was unprecedented. She had saved one life, and in doing so, had created a ripple that reached far beyond the small medical bay. The alien beside her watched silently, his body tense, yet his mind racing. He had expected punishment, not honor. He had prepared for death, not for his army to bow before a human. The commander finally stepped forward, tall and imposing despite the bow. He moved slowly, making no sudden gestures. He spoke in a low, clear tone that Lyra did not understand, yet the meaning was unmistakable. They were offering gratitude, respect, and acknowledgement for what she had done. Mercy had not gone unnoticed. The alien beside her shifted, finally understanding fully. He had never believed that humans were capable of this. War had taught him fear, distrust, and hatred. Yet now, through one small human's actions, he had witnessed a new truth, that courage and compassion could exist together. His army had followed his words, trusting his judgment, and in doing so, they honored the one being who had defied the cycle of violence. Lyra moved closer to the window, watching the alien soldiers kneel in silence. Their gesture was quiet, simple, and powerful. She realized that in this moment, something had changed. The galaxy had seen what humans could be, not just fighters, not just survivors, but healers who risked everything to protect life. And for the alien soldier who had been saved, this was a moment of reckoning. He understood that the world was larger, more complicated, and far more hopeful than he had ever imagined. The army did not stay long. After the silent acknowledgement, they retreated back to their ships, leaving the medical bay and its occupants untouched. Lyra exhaled slowly, relief flooding through her. The alien beside her stared after them, stunned by the outcome. He had expected anger, punishment, or war, but none had come. Only respect. Only recognition. Only the quiet truth that kindness had power, even against the tide of fear. That night the alien lay back on the bed, no longer fully tense. He did not speak, but his glowing eyes met Lyra's, and a single movement, a tilt of his head, spoke volumes. He had seen what humans could be, and he had learned that mercy could change even the course of armies. Lyra smiled softly, brushing a hand over his arm. Trust had grown into understanding, and understanding had begun to reshape everything they thought they knew about each other. The engines of the departing fleet faded into the distance, leaving the moon quiet once more. But in the small medical bay, the ripple of that day would not fade. Two lives, once set against each other by war, had now become the bridge for something far greater. Humanity had shown strength through mercy, and the galaxy had begun to notice. The moon was quiet, but inside the medical bay, a new tension lingered. The alien soldier lay on the bed, now fully healed but still cautious. Lyra moved around him, preparing supplies for the night, her movements calm and steady. Outside, the quiet of space was broken only by the faint hum of distant ships, but she knew the galaxy had begun to notice what had happened. The events of the day had created ripples far beyond the small outpost. The alien looked at her, his glowing eyes steady for the first time. He had witnessed his army bow to a human, not out of fear but out of respect. He had expected judgment or death, but instead had seen honor. He understood something now that he had never known, that humans were capable of mercy, and that mercy could be stronger than force. Lyra sat beside him, checking the last of his bandages. She spoke softly, not needing to explain anything further. "You're safe," she said. "And you've taught others a lesson they will not forget." The alien tilted his head, processing her words. His species valued strength, obedience, and loyalty, yet here was a human showing courage in a way they had never considered. The next morning, the communication console beeped urgently. Lyra approached, curious but cautious. A message from the alien fleet appeared, not a demand, not a threat, but a signal of peace. The healed soldier had sent a transmission, telling his commanders about the human who had saved him. He spoke of her mercy, her courage, and the respect she had earned. The message carried through the fleet, reaching every ship. The alien beside her stirred, watching the readout on the console. He had expected reprisals, punishment, or at least suspicion. Instead, he saw the result of a single act of kindness, recognition, honor, and a chance for peace. He understood now that mercy could ripple outward, changing the minds of many and shaping the galaxy in ways he had never imagined. Hours later, small shuttles from the fleet began to arrive again, this time with different intent. They landed carefully near the outpost, their movements deliberate and non-threatening. Lyra watched from the bay, keeping close to the alien soldier. He remained calm, though his glowing eyes were wide with cautious hope. The alien soldiers disembarked slowly, forming neat lines, each step showing respect for both their healed comrade and the human who had saved him. The commander approached the bay, standing tall but without aggression. He paused at the door, speaking in his own language, which Lyra did not understand, but she sensed the meaning. gratitude, acknowledgement, and respect. The alien soldier beside her nodded subtly, understanding perfectly. He had taught them something they could not have learned from orders or force, that humans could act with courage and honor, and that mercy had its own power. Lyra stepped forward carefully, offering a simple greeting. She did not bow, did not show fear, only acknowledged their presence. The aliens responded with subtle gestures of respect, mirroring the calm patience she had shown throughout their time together. There were no weapons drawn, no threats, only quiet recognition of what had been accomplished. The alien soldier looked around, witnessing the scene he had once thought impossible. His people, trained for war and vengeance, were honoring a human. He understood that this moment was more than recognition, it was a change in perspective. They were learning that strength was not measured only by power, but also by the courage to show mercy. Lyra offered food and water, careful to maintain the calm she had cultivated. The alien soldiers accepted, not as a surrender but as a sign of understanding. They shared the moment in quiet silence, a small but powerful connection forming between species that had once been enemies. The healed soldier watched with pride, knowing that his life had created this bridge, and that mercy had transformed fear into respect. The day wore on, and the fleet prepared to depart once more. Before leaving, the alien commander approached Lyra and extended a gesture of acknowledgement. It was subtle, simple, but it carried the weight of gratitude for her courage, care, and unwavering mercy. Lyra accepted with a nod, understanding that her actions had changed the course of many lives. As the ships lifted off, the healed soldier turned to her. He spoke softly in his own language, but she felt the meaning clearly. "You have saved more than me. You have saved hope." Lyra smiled gently. "Sometimes mercy is the strongest weapon," she said. The alien nodded slowly, finally trusting her completely, and for the first time he felt the depth of what she had done. Not just healing his body but changing his understanding of humanity forever. The moon grew quiet again, but the impact of the day lingered. Word of the event would travel far, carrying the message that humans could be more than warriors, they could be healers, protectors, and agents of change. The galaxy had witnessed the strength of compassion, and the healed soldier understood that his life, once in peril, had become a symbol of hope and trust. Lyra remained at the outpost, watching over him and the quiet moonscape beyond. She knew that wars would come and go, but this moment, this act of mercy would endure. It had changed the soldier, his army, and perhaps even the course of future conflicts. Trust had been earned, respect had been given, and the galaxy had learned that courage was not only in battle, but in the willingness to protect life, even that of an enemy. The alien soldier lay back on the bed, fully healed, his glowing eyes reflecting quiet admiration. He had learned that humans could inspire loyalty not through fear, but through compassion. Lyra sat beside him, her presence calm and steady, and together they watched the stars, knowing that one simple act of mercy had reshaped the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be strong. In that small medical bay, far from the war-torn regions of space, a bond had been forged and a lesson had been taught. Mercy could change the course of armies, transform enemies into allies, and make the universe a place where hope survived. The galaxy had seen humanity's greatest strength, not weapons, not technology, but the courage to choose compassion, even in the face of fear.